Thank you for the water.
We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to the January 21st City Council meeting. And let the record show that all city councilors are present. The mayor is absent and on vacation in sunny somewhere, Amazon River or something like that. Ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentations. Tonight, we will be doing the election of the city council president per state code 50-702. So we would like a nomination.
I would like to make a nomination that Linda Wilhelm continue her role as council president.
Second.
Any other nominations? Shannon, will you take the roll?
Thorson?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you for your confidence, you guys.
Absolutely.
Any amendments to the agenda?
There are none tonight.
Any declarations of conflict? Seeing none, will you present the consent calendar, please, Shelley?
Sure. Item A is minutes from the January 7th, 2020 City Council meeting. Item B is payables December 31st, 2019 through January 13th, 2020. Item C is contract extension with Northwest Waste and Recycling Post Falls Sanitation. Item D is financial advisor services agreement with Piper Sandler.
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Shannon, will you take the roll?
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now, I would like to give a couple of mayor announcements. The first one is on Monday, former Mayor Clay Larkin passed away. Clay's dedication and love for this community cannot be diminished by his passing. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Also, Thursday, January 23rd from 3 to 8, and on Friday, January 24th from noon to 6 in the Rotunda at City Hall, there will be an open house on the Park and Recreation Master Plan. The subject is the community center and downtown area. Also, there will be a City Council workshop on Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 at the Police Department, and the topic there is the future land use map. There are 4 public hearings tonight. If you wish to speak, there are sign-up sheets at the back podium. Please bring those forward to the city clerk and we'll give you a chance to speak. That being said, we'll open the first public hearing, the Daeland Annexation.
Good evening, Council President Wilhelm and council members. My name is Ethan Porter, planner with the City of Post Falls, here to present Daeland Property Annexation Case File ANNX-12-2019. The owner of this property is Daeland Incorporated, and the applicant is Dobler Engineering here tonight, and they have a representative here tonight to speak after I. Looking at the requested action, the City Council tonight is being asked by the applicant to review the annexation request of approximately 5 acres and to make a decision of approval or denial of the proposed community commercial services zoning designation. Here you can see that the property is in the hatched red mark here. It's at the northwest corner of Pleasant View Road and Celtice Way. Pleasant View Road is a minor arterial and Celtice Way is a principal arterial. Looking more at the parcel, it is vacant and there's no significant topology or vegetation issues on site. The water and sewer would be provided by the City of Post Falls. And then looking further at the zoning, you can see here that south is industrial in the gray. To the east, it is red, which is community commercial services, and then everything in white to the north and the west is county. And there are some residential that you can see throughout this as well. Primarily industrial and industrial and commercial are surrounding the site, other than county. Looking at the 6 zone change review criteria that planning and zoning based their recommendation on, I will quickly go through these, but you can find more detail in your staff report. They basically made the recommendation based on the consistency with the future land use map, the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan, and then the street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. And then looking as well at commercial, and as I mentioned, it's along streets with a higher road classification. Looking at the future land use designation, we can see that it is designated as commercial as well as the surrounding properties around it. You can see the residential in the yellow, the industrial in the purple. Looking more in depth into the annexation policies, you can find a list of them in your staff report, but I'm going to highlight some main points. We're looking at the policies to seek completion or continuation of a pedestrian network that connects neighborhoods and amenities. We should be consistent with the city's master plans, as well as be a priority for utility infrastructure that is readily available. And it should be a timing, the timing of annexation should be coordinated with opportunities for orderly development of public systems. So looking back at this map here, you can see that upon development and annexation, this piece of Celtice Way fronting it will be developed, as well as Pleasant View here. That'll be basically curb street trees, curbs, and sidewalk, basically connecting that to the surrounding uses as well. It would improve this intersection, and upon staff review, it doesn't appear to be any traffic impacts of a commercial zoned designation at this site, due to, like I mentioned before, the arterials that are alongside of it. The infrastructure is readily available there as well, since it is abutting the city, and Celtice Way is a commercial corridor, so this commercial annexation would further help out that commercial corridor as well. Looking at the annexation agreement inclusions within the staff report, basically prior to a commencement of development, the property owner shall grant to the city the water rights as needed, and then if there is a well on site, it would still be used for agricultural purposes until further time it doesn't need to be used, and then would further be transferred over to the city or water purveyor at that time. And then looking at the second annexation agreement inclusion would be the dedication of rights-of-way and easements, as you can see there along Celtice Way and Pleasant View Road. Those rights-of-way would be, and easements would be dedicated. And then the third inclusion would be the site access subject to KMPO critical access corridor policy, which you can further see as well in your staff report. These were the agencies that I was routed to for review. And then the comments that we received back were neutral for Kootenai County Fire and Rescue and Post Falls Police Department. Kootenai County Community Development has no issues or concerns with the proposal. And then the Post Falls Highway District just puts on there, no additional approaches will be permitted along Pleasant View Road per district's access management ordinance. Do you have any questions this time for staff?
Any questions for Ethan? Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
I just have one question, Robbie. I think in the staff report, it had the proposed annexation is not currently served with water, but the property is identified as part of the future Post Falls Water District?
Correct, yes.
Oh.
So that means that it's a future Post Falls Water District pending annexation, and we would include that into being serviced by the water. by
So
the
how is
city.
the district different than the city of Post Falls?
That,
Water. They're the same thing, aren't they? Okay. I was just confused by seeing district in there. I didn't think. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. And the applicant wishes to speak? Please come forward. And just your name for the record.
My name is Connie Kruger, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Dobler Engineering. Gordon Dobler is the engineer of record for this project and for actually 2 other annexations tonight, and he is out of the country right now, so he asked me to represent him. So I'm somewhat familiar with the projects. Ethan's staff report is great. It covers absolutely everything. And the applicant and Mr. Dobler are aware of the provisions that will be in the annexation agreement, and will agree to those. So we just request approval of this annexation with the zoning as proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak?
We have none.
Okay, I assume we don't want any rebuttal, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Council, how would you like to act?
Seems like a natural extension to me, so
I think it's a great fit.
I would move to approve the Daeland annexation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Shannon, would you take the roll?
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye. Okay, so moved. Next annexation is Tedder annexation. And it looks like Ethan again. Thank you.
Open the hearing.
Oh, open the public hearing. Sorry.
Evening again, Council President Wilhelm and council members. Ethan Porter here to present the Tedder annexation case file ANNX-13-2019. The owner is Tedder Properties LLC, and the applicant is H2 Surveying Engineering, who is here tonight to represent. The requested action tonight is the City Council is being asked to review the application, the annexation request of approximately 10.1 acres, and to make a decision of approval or denial of the proposed single-family residential R1 zoning designation. Here you can see the subject site hatched in red. It's north of Spokane River, south of Ponderosa Boulevard as well, and the Centennial Trail as well along Ponderosa Boulevard. Looking more at the parcel, you can see that it was vacant county land. There is slopes that are near the riverfront, and the water and sewer is provided by the city of Post Falls. Looking further, talking more about the slopes, that you can see the contour map here that I presented. It's kind of shows how steep some of the slopes may be. Upon staff and the applicant owner discussion, there doesn't seem to be any hindrance there for development, so we haven't seen any issues there present itself. Looking further at the zoning, you can see that it is surrounded by R1 zoning in the yellow to the east and to the north. There's the county pocket here that it is part of to the west. And then south, obviously, is Spokane River. Again, looking at the zone change review criteria that Planning and Zoning based their recommendation off of, you can see it here. I won't repeat it, but the 6 review criteria are right there that they based it off of. Looking at the future land use designation, you can see that it is all residential surrounding this subject site as well as the subject site itself. So this R1 zoning designation request is compliant with that. Looking at some of the policies found within the staff report, the land to be annexed should enable completion or continuation of a pedestrian network. As I mentioned, the Centennial Trail is along Ponderosa Boulevard on the north side, so this would help with frontage improvements to further connect and create more of a pedestrian network and access for that as well for pedestrians to move. And then the timing of annexation should be coordinated with opportunities for orderly development of public systems. And so looking further at the map, you can see that it is surrounded on the east and to the north of already incorporated lands and residential homes. So infrastructure is already there and available. So that would be the orderly development portion of that. Looking at the third annexation policy that I have up here, we're looking at annexing infill pockets, and as I mentioned also before, that this is a large infill pocket here, and this is a rather big chunk that would be taken up, so this is in compliance with the comprehensive plan in that regards. Excuse me. Looking at the fourth annexation policy that I have, looking at the parks and the pedestrian network for that. the park system. You can see here that the red star on the bottom here is where the subject site is. It's within a park mile buffer of the existing parks, as well as there's no target or park open space areas that are indicated per these lighter shades of green throughout. So there's none down here. So it is being serviced from the park mile buffer. Here's the agencies that it was routed to. And then the responses were neutral for the Post Falls Police Department, Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, and then Kootenai County Community Development had no comments or concerns with this. Do you have any questions for this proposal?
Any questions for Ethan? Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Does the applicant wish to speak? Just your name for the record, thank you.
Good evening, Council, President, Council. Scott MacArthur, H2 Surveying and Engineering, P.O. Box 2916, Hayden, Idaho. As you can see, as Ethan has put together a really well-prepared staff report, the property is consistent and contiguous with the residential developments around it for the R1 zoning. It's consistent with the land use map. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I'm a little biased, but it makes a great little development piece of property in Post Falls. So I think it's a great addition for the annexation. And yeah, Ethan mentioned the slopes, and I guess we didn't talk about this at the time of P&Z, but the slopes on the side are 3 to 1, sometimes 4 to 1, 5 to 1. Not that steep. It lends itself really nice to development, so it's not a concern. We've looked at it through and through. So stand for any questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Any comments?
We have none.
Okay. And I don't think anybody wants to rebut, so we'll close the public hearing. Council, how would you like to act?
Again, it seems like a very natural progression of what's been developing down there, so I would move to approve the Tedder annexation with the proposed R1 zone.
Second that.
Moved and seconded. Shannon?
Borders,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next, we'll close the public hearing. No, we closed the public hearing. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing for Tranquil Meadows annexation. And it looks like John Manley.
Good evening, Council President Wilhelm, members of City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls. First, I want to clarify there was a little confusion in how that staff report was formulated. We are just looking at the annexation. There's a little bit of muddled data between P&Z and is it a subdivision? Subdivision was heard before P&Z, and it's going to be contingent on tonight's public hearing. So what's before you is pertinent to the annexation request. They're seeking approval of approximately 4.9 acres with a proposed single-family R1 zoning designation. The applicant is Dobler Engineering on behalf of Coca Land LLC. Project location is, as you see here, highlighted in the red hatch. It's just a little bit west of the intersection of Chase and Prairie Avenue. Currently, it's being used for a large lot residential home within Kootenai County. There's no significant vegetative or topographical concerns. Water would be serviced by East Green Acres Irrigation District, with the City of Post Falls providing the sewer. So on December 10th, the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you know, did forward a recommendation for this R1 zoning, but they acknowledged that they would want to do this, though, with a recommendation of a density cap of 2.5 dwelling units per acre. Would want to add, from a staffing perspective on this, you've seen the subdivision that was in the packet. In a short time frame, if something gets platted, administratively, items like this get caught fairly easy. If for some reason market changes or a project languishes 10 years down the road, these become more difficult for staff to find, not overburdensome, but potentially they become these little secret scrolls because they're not. It's not intuitive to be going and looking at all these annexation agreements for permitted rights with development. And this recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission was, well, as you've heard tonight, was on these 6 review criteria, and of which they found consistent with. You know, you look at the surrounding zoning, you do see the R1S to the west and to the south, with the white area being mostly in the county. You see the darker yellow a little bit further to the east. Those are R1 zone lots, and that lighter purple, it's mostly east of Chase. You see the higher density smart code lots. But looking into it a little bit further, kind of the adjacent, what are the makeup? Because a lot of times when we look at R1S, we're thinking 1 acre lots. Wanted to provide, as part of some of their request, we do have these lots just to the west that have a minimum requirement of about 8,000, and directly to the south, they're about 3rd-acre lots approximately. About 14,376 is what was approved with that. It was a part of a PUD. Both those were actually PUDs to get the higher density with that R1S. So their makeup is very R1-esque, or that has higher density than you would typically see in an R1S zoning district. Here's what you see for the future land use designation as being residential. Looking at the annexation policies that kind of help guide decisions. Looking at continuation of the pedestrian network. So although it's not very much along Prairie, you would get some improvements along the south side of Prairie, or cashed out, either or. They do plan and intend to connect this pedestrian corridor to, there's a linear park trail system that abuts it to the south. They do plan on connecting residents to that. You did see in a staff report the consistency of the proposal with the city master plans. Also, annexing lands with readily available infrastructure, and it was cited in the staff report as being serviceable. And then orderly development ties in with it as well. Is there public systems that can tie into this and be it as an orderly development and pattern of growth? And that was cited in the staff report. Also, you saw in some of the previous public hearings is parks, and is it serviceable with parks? This is within the service area. You see it here at the star. On the north side, if the proposal ever came in on the north, we probably would be looking for some mitigation. This here is outside of mitigating elements, so it would be considered serviceable. There were some items to be included in the annexation agreement. One of them deals with the water rights, if they exist, to be transferred to the appropriate parties. The other one deals with getting the appropriate easements with the HOA of Craftsman and Meadow Ridge, if necessary. The other one is dealing with rights-of-way, Prairie Avenue, being 55-foot, 1/2 road right-of-way, and the accompanying 15-foot sidewalk easement, and other utility easements. And additionally, comply with the site access of the KMPO critical access corridor policy, and that pertains to mostly Prairie Avenue. Agencies routed, as you see here. Post Falls Police Department and the Kootenai County Fire both commented with a neutral stance on the proposal. Any questions for me at this point?
No.
I don't know if this is a question for you, John, or better one for Warren, but that issue, Planning and Zoning did a great job of talking about this, but there was some question from Mr. Cafferty, or there were some questions to Mr. Cafferty about the legality of building in that into the annexation agreement, the 2.5 units per acre? Because once we make this R1, what's to keep them from tossing that out?
So you can include this in an annexation agreement. The state code essentially speaks to development agreements. If you're going to have requirements for how, let me back up and make this a little clearer. So typically, if you grant a zoning district, the R1 district, the applicant is entitled to all of the rights that they would get in R1. So if you want to limit that, if you want to say you get all of R1, but these kinds of things, we're going to require you to have a different density or a different lot size that would otherwise be required, you can do that through a development agreement. There's some upsides and some downsides to that. You get some certainty on what you're going to get, The problem that John highlighted is it becomes a shortcut for really addressing your zoning code and looking at, do we really need to have some greater gradation in our zoning district so that we can address some of these issues? It also becomes really difficult to find these down the road. We had an instance in the past year that you actually saw where there was an annexation agreement, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that had some of this language in it that no one knew about, because the folks that approved that have all left, and so the planning staff is approving this. They go look at the zoning code to find what's allowed. They don't necessarily go digging through all of the old agreements, and so things get missed. It's not great practice, but you can do it.
So, question for John or for you, Warren, I guess, is there some way to highlight this annexation so that in the future, 15 years from now, that when somebody goes to look at that and says, oh, it's R1, that there's a star or something there that says it's R1 with an asterisk?
Well, more than likely, depending on the outcome, we could maybe work with our GIS like we do with our PUD. It gets a hatch and it denotes go investigate the details of this PUD. We create some other symbology and we'd say, oh, there's a floating annexation agreement on this. So you leave a crumb for the future.
Okay.
That's off the top of my head how I probably would turn to is GIS.
So I would say there's probably nothing foolproof. There's probably some things we can do that try to help us find things down the road. The other thing to keep in mind in this instance, the subdivisions for this piece of property was approved at the Planning Commission. So assuming that this annexation goes forward, that subdivision is in line with the density that the Planning Commission was looking for. So the only way you're not going to get those densities is for something to happen, the market to fall apart, and the developer decide to sit on this property and not develop now, because the subdivision is going to meet this requirement, more or less. And John can speak to what that density looks like.
So what's a better way to do this then, too? Because in the past, we have annexed R1S and had them put a PUD over the top of it to get a tighter density.
Honestly, the best way is probably to revise the zoning code and come up with sort of a shoulder zoning district that addresses some of this.
Is the applicant and the city willing to wait however many months that's going to take?
I would say, as I said, I think the subdivision probably addresses it in this instance. And the other thing that I would throw out there is typically these types of conditions are added when there's a concern generated by the public that there's an impact, a negative impact being created by the development, that this condition allows you to address that negative concern. I wasn't at the Planning Commission, but my understanding was it wasn't a terribly contentious hearing. John can speak to that more than I can. So your job tonight is to, based on the testimony and evidence that comes in tonight, is there a warrant for having that level of a condition placed on this zoning district? I mean, is there something negative that's being created by the smaller lots?
Anyone else? Go ahead, Joe.
So access is not going to be permitted from Prairie Avenue, correct?
Oh, yeah.
I'll go back to.
Yeah, there's access.
Is there? I thought that was against the highway district.
Engineering can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they were going to allow one access between Howell and Chase, and then all the other ones were going to have internal circulation to it.
Okay, so if this does have access from Prairie, there's going to be no future access allowed off of Prairie?
That'd be correct.
Okay.
What does this do for properties on either side? I mean, the whole idea of having this 2.5 units per acre is to create some consistency and density between the subdivisions that are already there and what we're proposing. So, I mean, does it kind of put do we lock down those others and say, hey, we're going to do the same thing with those other pieces of property? We're not going to let them just stand alone as R1?
All I can do is speak from my experience, and it's not going to be fact, but more opinion, is, as you know in the staff report, and we haven't heard this yet, you know that Quiet Ridge is to the east. The subdivision for that, and I don't want to go too many detail is about 9.9 acres versus the 18.4 that we're going to be hearing in a little bit. That leaves a remnant portion to bear the cost of improvements on Prairie and Chase. Traditionally, costs drive up density and drive up use requests. More than likely, down the road, even if this all comes in as R1, there'll probably be a proposal to do some modification because the costs are going to create that need. Also, there's pre-existing structures on that have value. So when you combine frontage improvements along with pre-existing structures with decent value, it's going to culminate to a request for additional densities. Whether that ever gets approved, that's to be seen. We do have in our draft comp plan a node identified on Prairie Avenue. The reason for that is recently there was a population estimate, or we calculated it based off GIS on this central Prairie area, and we currently have about 9,000 people that reside just on between a pole line and along Prairie between Fieldstone and these R1S lots and in Crown Point. So all those people currently are heading down south to Southeast Way and eventually 41. And so providing some commercial services up here would help alleviate some of that traffic. Plus Prairie Avenue is going to be a 5-lane road. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but this is a very complicated scenario because we have the road classification of Prairie Avenue, which is going to be highly traveled, a growing trend for desires of probably higher density and multifamily along Prairie Avenue, and 1-acre lots in a close proximity. How it transitions is going to be a lot of up to each applicant and decisions at that time.
Okay, that's fair.
Thank you, John. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Is there anything you want up?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pull up my presentation. I think it's right there.
Which one? This one.
Yeah, that one.
We'll do that. And then there's your mouse, and I'll step aside.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Connie Kruger, here on behalf of Dobler Engineering and the applicant. I have a kind of quiet voice. Can you all hear me? Am I projecting? Okay, wonderful. I'm not going to go through our entire presentation tonight because it's very similar to the staff report. But there are a couple of items within this that I thought might be helpful to the discussion. As we know tonight, we're not making decisions related to subdivisions. This is about annexation. But this is about annexation as it relates to a proposed subdivision. And to accomplish the subdivision, we're willing to look at these density limits that the Planning Commission elaborated on in their discourse. So, and you're well aware of that as you've looked through the minutes. There's a lot of good information there. Our requested zoning, again, is R1, and in this case, we have a very small site area. It's 4.87 acres. And so we're proposing 12 lots. I know it's kind of hard to see the subdivision there, but you can see that access point onto Prairie and then some of the east-west access points. Our dwelling units per acre are 2.46, which would come in under the 2.5 dwelling unit per acre limit that would be proposed with the annexation agreement. And you can see here our minimum and maximum lot sizes range from 10,000 to 17,000 square feet, with our median at 12,000. So when you look at your R1 zoning, I believe the R1 zoning is a minimum of 6,500 square feet. So our median lot size is actually nearly double what the R1 is. And so our desire is not for the lots that the R1 allows. And if there were an intermediary type of zoning district, we would be looking for that. In this case, the market is good. These are smaller development lots, and you'll see this also in Quiet Ridge. This is certainly something where the developer and owner of the land would be interested in trying to maximize on this year's market. And so as you go through the platting process from the time that you have a concept through approval to building your infrastructure and finalizing your lots and making them marketable and saleable, with where we're at in the year, we would most likely lose this year if we had any further deferral of this as we went into discussion about creating a new zone district. So we do like the proposal that the Planning and Zoning Commission put forward. I used to work for the city of Hayden, and in Hayden we actually had a number of different annexation agreements that had density limits on them. And I agree they do tend to hide. That is something that the staff becomes aware of over time as you see more of them occur. And the other thing that I would recommend is possibly looking at recording the annexation agreement to title, so that for any future purchaser of the property, the annexation agreement also is something that could be discovered through a title search. Not all title companies will pull those, but at least you put it to title and you have that opportunity. And then the idea of doing the GIS mapping and doing some kind of an overlay zone would really be helpful to your staff to be able to recall that. One of the other elements here to consider is that if we do not look at annexation with some type of a agreement related to density limits, what we're left with is we're left with a PUD as our option. And we have looked into other PUDs in the area, and I don't have a slide on this, but I do have a note on this for a discussion on density. And so for us to be able to maintain that median of the 12,000 square foot lot, we would have to enter into a PUD. With that, we would have a 10% open space requirement on a less than 5 acre lot, which would create very little usable area for parkland or for open space. What we see as a trend with this is that, of course, HOAs don't love to maintain open space, and especially when they're this small. In this case, the developer has anticipated this, and they've negotiated to annex into the Meadow Ridge HOA's open space. And in this case, it hasn't been developed because the HOA doesn't want the maintenance, so this helps to also move that forward. We have looked at another one in the area, a PUD, which was done with the RS1 zoning, and I believe it's called Arrowleaf. And in this case, what happened is in that 10-acre PUD, the median lot size actually ended up being 8,500 square feet. So by doing a PUD, you actually ended up with smaller lot size than what we're proposing. And then again, we would also lose lots, and as you reduce the number of lots, the financial viability of these small developments goes down pretty dramatically. So that's why we're willing to enter into an agreement and look at ways to make that easy to discover for the staff as you move forward in the future.
Any questions?
We're good. We're good. I'm good.
Good. Okay, thank you. Any comments?
We have none.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Council, how would you like to act?
Sounds to me like planning and zoning did all the heavy lifting in this situation. The applicant's open to the 2.5 restriction, and I think that's it'll be a good fit for that particular area of the city. So I would move that we approve the annexation request ANNX 00142019.
Second.
With the cap or no?
With the 2.5.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Shannon?
Wolf?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Yeah, they should sell really fast anyway, so those big lots. Okay, next public hearing will be Quiet Ridge annexation, and I'll open the public hearing. John?
All right, thank you. So yes, this is the Quiet Ridge that was referred to in the last public hearing, case file ANNX 15, 2019. You're being requested the 18.4 acres for the proposed R1 single-family zoning district. Here, though, you get the variety of ownerships: Ryan Stoker, Coca Land, LLC, and Dave Fair, and the applicant being the Dobler Engineering. Project location, as you see here, directly southwest of Chase and Prairie. Once again, you have large lot residential homes in the Kootenai County, no topography or vegetation issues, water being provided by East Green Acres, sewer being provided by the city of Post Falls, Similar recommendation from the P&Z with this time though a modification to 2.7 dwelling units per acre. Similar conversations. Review criteria, we've gone through that. Future land use map, goals and policies, no conflict, major transportation routes, got good access, serviceable. So here you see to the south and to the east, you see the R1S in the yellow, the R1 in the darker yellow, with here you can see a little bit better on this picture, the crown point, the purple being the smart grid zone just to the east. Here's where it fits in to the other lots in the area. It's residential in the future land use map. Annexation policies. Here you would get with improvement ultimately, improvements on Prairie and Chase, so that would connect some of these neighborhoods, either future developments nearby, south on Chase, or along Prairie. Staff report did comment on the consistency with the master plans and the compatibility with the parks and emergency services. Utility infrastructure is available. Would be considered orderly development based on nearby development and services provided. Here's where you see the project outside of any critical area for the park's service area, therefore it'd be serviceable with existing parks. Looking at the items for including in the agreement, you see once again, the water rates conversation, getting the water rates from the landowner if available. Here you do see Prairie Avenue and Chase Road, the appropriate right-of-way that would be needed as part of the agreement. And then the site access on Prairie Avenue and the critical access corridor being compatible with it. Here's the agencies that are routed. Post Falls Police Department, Kootenai County Fire, both were neutral. Any questions for staff on this annexation?
And I think we discussed a little bit, the entrance then to the development would be through the main street, would be Foxtel then?
Yeah, they're working with this HOA to get access in through the south of this corridor. Similarly, they are providing a pedestrian connection about this location to get use of that open space as well.
Al?
John, I'm a little confused about the 2.7 units per acre. Does that only apply to the 9.9?
That would apply to the whole 18.4.
Oh, it will.
Because it would be part of the annexation agreement.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe Warren, I don't know if there's a way to craft it different, that the 2.7s apply to the 9.9. Outside of that area, it's...
So we can do whatever you want. I mean, we can draft it in whichever fashion you think is the most appropriate based on the testimony and the evidence before you tonight. We can apply it across the entire annexation area. If in the future you want to see a node in that location where you're going to want to have commercial or more density, we can certainly carve out that corner piece and have it just apply to the smaller 9 whatever acres that is, however you want us to proceed. But we probably ought to get that after you get the rest of the testimony tonight.
Okay, we're good for now.
Good for now?
Okay.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you.
John.
And would the applicant like to speak?
There you go.
My name is Connie Kruger on behalf of Dobler Engineering, for the record. Much as with the last annexation, I'm not going to do a complete presentation, but we'll just zero in on the subdivision that was proposed with this application, which again we know is not in discussion tonight, but which may provide some information. So as you can see, this is also requested zoning of R1, and our site area is a little bit less than 10 acres. We proposed 26 lots with dwelling units per acre at 2.617 acres. Here our lot size for our minimum and our maximum are a little bit different than in the other development, and we're at about close to 11,000 square feet at a minimum and about 13.5 at maximum, with a median of close to 12,000, so very similar to our last proposal in terms of median lot size. In this case, as you're well aware and you pointed out, the subdivision is not representing all of the acreage that's involved with the development. And so we'll take a look back here. And I believe the subdivision is actually on these two lots, is that right? Yeah, so it actually doesn't abut Chase at this point in time, is that correct? Okay. Yeah, so in terms of the annexation and how this should apply across all the land, I have not talked to Mr. Dobler about his preference on that. It just wasn't a question that came up. He did indicate that he was in agreement with the staff recommendation and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation. And so I'm a little unclear myself if those recommendations, as stated, if they were to apply to the entire property or just to this piece. So he certainly is willing to allow something very similar to what was allowed on the other, but he was looking at it as a recommendation that came out of the Planning and Zoning deliberation. So I think I have a few questions on this myself.
Anybody have questions for Connie?
I just wanted some clarification on that myself, and it seems like it's still a little fuzzy.
It is a little fuzzy, so he certainly is willing as it relates to this subdivision. Yeah.
Okay.
And if there is a need for us to clarify that, I did talk to Mr. Dobler about possibly doing a continuance on a public hearing if there was an item that would be of concern, and he was open to that. So.
One quick thing, the owner of the property that's directly adjacent to Chase and Prairie is present tonight and does plan to speak. Maybe Warren could comment whether or not it'd be better to do that now as part of the applicant or part of the public testimony.
It's probably public testimony, I would say.
Okay. So that might help.
Okay.
That might help clarify that discussion of how holistically to apply that 2.7.
Yeah. I just didn't want to approve something that then is going to create a problem for everybody involved, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon? Okay, in favor and wishes to speak, Dave Fair. Dave?
Maybe I know how to use it. Dave Fair, 3875 North Chase Road. Council President, Council. Maybe get the glare out of there just a little bit. My wife and I own 3 of the 5 parcels that are listed as part of that Quiet Ridge annexation. You know, when we purchased the property back in the mid-90s, everybody kept asking us, why are you living so far out of town? It was 2 miles from the Slab Inn, or Southeast Way. It didn't seem so far out. I can tell you that it isn't today either. We've seen a lot of changes happen on that corner. We've seen a lot of growth go around us. We've heard the discussions when it went from the 5 acres to the 1 acres of the Meadows, and then the Craftsman at Meadow Ridge came in, and that was proposed as an R1. That was a little bit of an outcry. It went to the R1S, but then they did the PUD. Once again, it went a little bit smaller. We've seen to the east a lot smaller. We've seen apartments come into our neighborhood. So we've seen a lot of changes. There's no one zoning that's going to make anybody happy. We recognize that. We have stayed out of annexing into the city because we farm. And it's always been a concern for us that if we were wanting to continue farming, would we be able to? I've been told that, yes, we will continue to farm, so it made sense for us to join this annexation. We are piggybacking upon it, and it's a response to that change. We recognize that the area around us has changed. We don't want to be another pocket within the city. We don't want to be kicking the can down the road. So it seemed like the right time. I recognize that it makes it a little bit harder because you're dealing with a developer and you're dealing with a homeowner who owns about half of the property. We are asking that you look for our property to be a R1 zoning. Obviously, that's a higher density than what the developer is looking for, but because of where we're at, you can see our property as it's marked out in here on Chase. Give you a little better perspective. Well, it's still the glare. Okay. It is in here, but you look at all the density, you look at apartments there, Crown Point. It's on prairie. There's a lot of development requirements on that, a lot of things happening in Chase. It's going to take up a lot of land. So if we get ready to sell it, we don't know what a developer will want for it or if we develop ourselves. We do know that you're going to have a lot of requirements for land exaction and for the development of Chase Road and Prairie Road. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed up. But we are in support of it, but we asked for the R1. I also asked that the city look at that, the area along Prairie Avenue and what your exactions are. I would ask that the southern boundary of that be tied into the roundabout. I think the highway district pretty much set that corner when they put in the roundabout. That was 2 years ago, and part of the reason it got set there is they didn't want to have to go into the church and have to deal with the condemnation of the church. So they went north into the west and dealt with those properties, us included. So, but I think that boundary, those same restraints there, plus there's a fiber optic vault. So the cost to develop further to the south would be difficult, and we would ask that southern boundary of prairie be considered by engineering. And I'm out of time. So I stand for questions. I thank you for your time and for listening to me.
Okay, and also neutral and does not wish to speak is Marnie Fair. And Marnie, I'm just going to read what you said. She said, even though we are joining in on the annexation, we desire to continue our farming lifestyle for as long as possible. We recognize the changes in our community, increases in the traffic, and housing has had an impact on our farm. More noise stresses the animals. There's an increase of garbage along the roadside and also an increase of bottles and cans tossed in our grazing fields. We wish to be assured that we can continue farming. Okay. And does the applicant wish to rebut? Obviously not, I don't think. So I'm gonna.
Is she coming up? Yep, she's coming.
Oh, she is gonna say something? Okay. Sorry, Connie.
Connie Kruger again for the record for Dobler Engineering. As I mentioned earlier, I'm standing in for Mr. Dobler as he is out of the area. I have not met the Fairs, and some of their testimony also gave me a question as to whether or not they were looking for the R1 zoning with the density limitation that was requested by the Planning Commission or without it. And so again, I'm left myself with some questions on this. And I think it's just a little bit by virtue of the fact that, I am standing in for somebody, and so I don't know the whole background on all of this. I would recommend that if there is still confusion there for the City Council on any of this, that again, we perhaps look at a continuance on the hearing just so that we get clarity on the subject. So.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Council? Go ahead, Joe.
So, It does make sense in that, the policies dictate that as you get closer to the denser parts of the city, that there could be denser development. So where you've got the R1S, you got 1 acre lots and 1/3 acre lots, plus the annexation we just did previously, going from 2.5 units per acre to 2.7 to an R1 right on the corner of, right along Chase, makes a lot of sense. How do we pull that off with one annexation?
So we can do that. If you want to say that the density restriction to 2.7 units per acre is just those 2 interior parcels that are being subdivided, we can draft the agreement to reflect that. So that the Fairs property would be R1 without the density cap.
So moved.
So we can do that all, second, with the question, we can do that all in one motion then?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll second that.
Carrie?
Still have discussions.
Well, my question is about the continuance of the farming. Does that have anything to do with R1? Who will determine that?
So typically when you annex in, or frankly, when you change zoning, regardless, however it happens, the use that you have, you're able to continue that use. It's a grandfathered use. So
okay.
you continue that use for so long as it continues. Once you discontinue that use, that grandfathered right goes away.
Okay.
So if they discontinue farming, if they stop the farming activities for a period of time, they would lose that ability to then resume farming again in the future. Or if they decide, we're done at this location, we're going to move and we're going to develop at that point with a subdivision of that property, the new owners wouldn't have that ability.
Good, because I love their little lambs.
Good. I guess my question is, we can do this, but should we do this? Because, we just talked about how confusing this can be moving forward. I'm curious why this doesn't come forward as 2 separate annexations. One being the 9.9 acres where we could put that restriction of 2.7 units per acre, and then a second annexation that's clear as a bell that it's R1 and going to be R1.
So I can speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
They're run together just for administrative ease. If you're having 3 property owners in one neighborhood annex at the same time, rather than have 3 separate hearings, 3 separate notifications, 3 separate charges for them to go through the process, it costs more to do it that way, and it's also administrative. There's more of a burden to do it that way. There will be separate annexation agreements for each of the owners, so the requirements in one aren't going to completely mirror the other one. So the Fairs, because they're not part of the ownership group for the subdivision, they will have, whoever owns the property today is who's going to sign that annexation agreement. So there will be separate annexation agreements for the 3 ownership groups.
Okay.
Makes sense.
John?
I did want to point something out, because Dave, the Fairs, they own this triangular piece that's part of the subdivision. So the subdivision that I have proposed included these 2 lots plus a small little triangle. So.
But he did even more.
So.
It's going to make a difference of 1 dwelling potentially?
I guess they'd have to, no, I guess it doesn't really.
That would be part of the annexation agreement too, when you finalize it.
Well, it's just looking at the bounds of where you apply that 2.7. Is it the bounds of the proposed subdivision area restricted to 2.7? Is it all owners outside of the Fairs, the 2 lots? It's just how do you define that bounds of applying the 2.7?
So
They have to be the 2 lots, right?
let me make a suggestion. I think we can work this out in the agreement. You're going to see these agreements for adoption. When we bring these back to you, I think we can answer that question for you. My inclination at this point is the 2.7 unit per acre limitation would apply to everything within the subdivision. Our practice is if there's a subdivision on the property, that subdivision approval gets referenced in the annexation agreement, so they mirror up. The requirements become the same. So I think we can bring this back to you in a way that the bulk of the Fairs property that's not involved in the subdivision would not be subject to the 2.7 per acre limitation.
Okay.
Okay.
So your motion,
Is what he just said.
Yeah. That's what I seconded.
I just want to clarify it, though, that basically we're saying, well, we agree to annex the property in, but the 9.9 acres that are,
9.926.
for all intents and purposes, the subdivision would be subject to the 2.7 units per acre. The other piece, the Fairs piece, is R1.
R1. Correct.
Are okay with that?
Yeah.
So let me recast your motion just to make sure we're all clear. So the motion would be a motion to approve the Quiet Ridge annexation with R1 zoning with a 2.7 unit per acre cap on all of that area of the annexation that is subject to the Quiet Ridge subdivision.
So moved.
Second.
You already moved.
We already did.
So clarified.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Shannon?
Anthony?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Any unfinished business? It looks like we have none. And citizens' issues, this is the time for citizens to come forward. And if you want to speak about anything that is not on the agenda, please come right up to the podium. Bob? Just your name for the record, sir.
Bob Flowers. Good evening, council. I'm bringing an issue up to you folks again tonight. I've brought it up to the police department. I've brought it up to you before. Then I asked the lieutenant tonight, what if these abandoned cars that keep blocking all the snow removal, what if a private individual called in a tow truck and paid the bill and had him towed away? What would be the circumstance? Well, they told me I'd get arrested for stealing a car. So that won't work. So I am asking, please enforce your own rules. Get these abandoned vehicles off the road. I know that we only have 1.5 code officers? Yeah, I'm not sure the right term for it. But, I mean, they have caused considerable problems clean through the city this whole last week or two. And they just leave them there. They don't care if they get buried in snowbanks. They don't have any plans on moving them. And we have rules in place. I saw Councilwoman Thorson answer that question on Facebook just not too long ago and told the citizens that if they're there over 24 hours, they're just supposed to be tagged and they're supposed to be gone. Well, they're not. And we need to get them off our streets. I know that we try our best to work with people, try not to be the bad guy, but I think the bad guys are the people that are leaving their darn cars on the streets and not allowing the trucks in. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any comments, Chief?
Council President Wilhelm and Council, yes, Chief Knight, Post Falls Police. I had a comment and meeting with our code enforcement folks today. Matter of fact, for about 20 minutes in my office, talking about the same issue. And obviously, they're out there busy today, trying to get cars out, get things moved, and meeting with people to get those things moved. It's an interesting topic every year, and we have 37,000 people in the city, and people seem to park in certain locations. You just drive by and say, why would you park there? But before you know it, the plow goes by and now they're plowed in. And so it's an issue we deal with. We do the best that we can to deal with it. And we'll continue to move forward with it. But we'll, like I said, we're working on it. We've got, I say more than 1.5. I actually consider 2 people in their code enforcement division, but we also have patrol officers who can go out and handle those too. So those calls come in, we try to deal with them as they come in. But I think they're hopefully getting a little more stringent on it. I don't know what their stats are on writing citations for them, but that's something I could find out as well.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, your department responds when somebody calls and says, hey, there's an abandoned car out here.
We do.
You don't go around patrolling looking for potentially abandoned cars, is that correct?
Not typically. Typically, with the number of folks that we have on, it's mostly a reactionary force. So we're getting phone calls that come in. We have 40,000 calls for service a year. We send them out as the calls come in. If time allows, there are people out there. I know today one of the code enforcement officers is actually going right down the street knocking on people's doors, talking to people. Hey, you got to get that car moved and dug out. Now, the first one may have started on a complaint, but then you look down the street and you have 4 or 5 others that you got to go out and, you can't tag one and not tag the other, so meeting with those people as well.
Right.
I have a question. Were you on my street by chance? I was a little grabby during the snowstorm because the plow drivers were doing a great job.
Right.
It just makes the streets so narrow when they've got to go.
Makes it difficult. If you go anywhere in our city, in Coeur d'Alene, you go in the back streets, you really can't have 2 cars wide. I mean, it's an issue in North Idaho here.
When you, saying abandoned cars, Mr. Flowers used that and you used that, abandoned cars. To me, in my head, abandoned cars are cars that 12 months out of the year are parked on the
Right.
street.
Right.
So a car that is parked for 24, 36, 48 hours and then gets buried.
Sure, and I can't certainly talk to what the citizens are seeing, because there are people that will leave their cars out in the street for a week at a time, but if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. So those cars that most time we're dealing with now are licensed, registered vehicles that either missed a snow plow, it caved them in, and then guess what they're doing? They're not going out and digging it out. They're just going to sit and either wait for the snow to thaw or something else to happen. And typically what happens is I've seen our own staff out there shoveling them out, trying to help them out and get them out of there. But yeah, there could be other enforcement efforts as well.
I have a question. So if there is a vehicle that everybody around thinks it's abandoned, how long, if you put a tag on it or something, or how long before you can tow it away?
48 hours.
48 hours?
Once it's tagged, we have 48 hours to get it removed, and
Okay.
and then we'll come out, and they put a pop-up call in 48 hours later. If it's not abandoned, they'll come out and remove it.
Okay.
And I do believe that the city of Coeur d'Alene last week began really enforcing that, the towing.
Yeah, and
Snow
in some
plowing.
of those back streets, you have to. You can't, if you've been down there recently, I was just down there last 2 days ago, and you just can't pass too wide. People are stuck reversing around, going different directions because there's so many cars out in the roadway, so it can be very difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the citizen issues?
My name is Connie Kruger, and since I'm here, I actually just thought I would take advantage of the opportunity to tell you what a great job you have been doing on snow removal in my neighborhood this year. I live in Post Falls. I live on Fraser Drive, and in past years I've had some very frustrating winters where it's been very hard to get out of my neighborhood. It's a loop, and we tend to be a little bit lower priority for plowing. And it's been significantly better this year. The communication, the email that you sent out on, or the flyer that you sent out on your new plowing protocol is on my refrigerator, just so that I kind of understand how you do that, and it's been significantly better. Also, we had a night here recently where I kind of saw these colored lights at about midnight, and I thought, oh my goodness, is there an accident or something in the neighborhood? And I looked out, and there were 2 plows that were side by side. It was at midnight, and I just couldn't even believe they were side by side plowing, and what a great job they were doing out there. So I want to compliment you. I think it's been great. It's hard. It's the impossible challenge. But we really have seen a change with it this year, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Shelley, will you pass that along?
I will, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any new business, but we do have 2 ordinances, and the first one is the school district property exchange.
I can get to it.
On there someplace.
I move to place the ordinance school district property exchange on its first and only reading by title while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Moved in second. Shannon?
Thorson,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Orders,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, authorizing the transfer of approximately 70 acres of real property owned by the City of Post Falls to Post Falls School District Number 273 for an approximately 80-acre parcel, providing for publication by summary and providing an effective date.
Move to approve the ordinance school district property exchange and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number that be published by summary only.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Shannon?
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Okay, our next ordinance, right-of-way vacation, Ford Street.
I move to place the ordinance right-of-way vacation Ford Street on its first and only reading by title while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Shannon?
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the vacation of rights-of-way situated in the southwest quarter of Section 2, Township 50 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, as described herein, providing for disposition of the vacated right-of-way, providing repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing severability, providing an effective date, and providing for other matters properly relating thereto.
Now that I've got Mac together, I move to approve the ordinance right-of-way vacation Ford Street, file number VK-0003-2019, and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Shannon?
Borders.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Thank you. Administrative staff reports, GSI mapping demo.
Good evening, Honorable, excuse me, I'm already screwed up. Mayor being gone made me move up right off the bat, starting off well. Council President William and council members, my name is Bob Folsom. I am the GIS coordinator for the city, and I want to first thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to listen to a brief report about some of the exciting things happening in the world of GIS at the City of Post Falls. GIS is fast becoming an important informational tool that is used by different departments throughout the city. The city initially started using GIS in the early 2000s, and it has since matured from sporadic project-based efforts to a pervasive tool used by many staff members throughout the city to help facilitate their day-to-day job activities. With the addition last year of the new GIS employee, we have been able to create accurate and comprehensive data sets that are being used by various departments throughout the city for different reasons. From the creation of accurate sanitary sewer, water, and stormwater infrastructure, from developer-submitted as-built design drawings, to park staff using GIS on tablets in the field for the collection of infrastructure information, from location of trails in our parks to the different types of equipment that is available in any given park at any given time. It was even used to help facilitate the order of fertilizer for the irrigated turf throughout the park system. Streets is using GIS to share data to the public, from displaying permitted road closures to displaying the plow status of the residential zones during a snow event like we've had last week. They're also, the Streets is also using GIS to track the year-to-year chip seals and paving progress throughout the city. One of the most exciting things happening in GIS is the ability to share data, whether it be to another employee in a different department or to the public. Data that has been created either in the field through field collection methods or in the office using design drawings can be shared to different departments and the public using web GIS. Web maps that are created can easily be accessed by any employee at their desk or by tablets in the field. Tools and information that once required specialized software and training to access are becoming more readily available through different web applications, like the one you see here. This is a vacant land analysis dashboard that was created that a user can zoom to any area in the city, and it will display the number of approved vacant lots that are still left in that particular area. It also displays the number of multifamily units that have been approved that have yet to finalize as far as certificate of occupancy goes. So there, in this map extent, there is 84 units left to develop multifamily, and that, of course, would be the second addition coming in there at Crown Point that's been approved and is in. So it's an easy way to get information. And another such tool is the swipe widget that's available in the main GIS viewer. I know it's been shown at some city council members in the past, but it's an easy method of being able to see the difference between one year's aerial photo and another. This is the Foxtail area, and as you can, and it's a 2019 aerial photo versus a 2017. 2019's on your left, 2017's on your right. You could easily see the roads coming in the 2019 that weren't there in 2017. It's an easy way to access change analysis. Field workers can now, through web applications such as the Utility Infrastructure Viewer, easily gain access to data directly in the field. They're out in the field, instead of carrying 9-10 sets of maps with them, they have access on their tablet to what you see right here. This is the Utility Infrastructure Viewer. It's a web application built with GIS that allows staff members to not only see and access information about the underlying utilities, but also to gain access to the as-built design drawings as they were submitted. With a click of a button, they're pulling up this information in the field, where before, if they ran into a problem, they had to come back to the office, dig up some old plans from who knows where, and figure out the information. One of the great things, and one of the things I like, is it's the ability to easily share data to the public. The more easily we make data available to the public, the better our jobs are going to be. Before, someone used to have, data that once required a customer to take time out of their busy schedule to call in or come into the front counter can now be shared through a web application. This is an example of the web application that was recently created that shares the status of the residential plow zones that are happening throughout the city. So this we finished it just in time. We finished it right before last week's snow event. And this would easily display to the public the status of the individual residential zones. The streets department went out, split the city into different zones, and then as they go into a zone, it gets flagged as it's snowplow in progress, and when they're completed, it turns to completed. You can see the green. So at this particular time that I took this snapshot, some of the city hadn't been started yet. The red are residential zones that haven't been plowed yet, started yet. The yellows are in progress and the greens are completed. This was easily created and shared to the public, and it obviously got some hits. This is a usage of that particular application and from January 9th to the 16th. And as you can see, in a week period of time, it received 744 hits as far as public usage. And of course, you can see the main hits came along Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th, which were the 2 days of the major storm event, but it continued getting activity throughout the whole week. And it's saved, we've had good feedback so far. It's a developing progress, and as things change, we'll easily be able to change the application with it. So that is sort of my quick presentation on what's going on with GIS. Is there any questions or comments? And right now this is our live portal, and this is eventually where we're moving as far as data sharing goes to the public. This will be an accessible site, not only internally, but to the public. And these are some of the applications that have already been created and set for people to view inside our GIS. Thank you again for your time, and is there any questions or comments?
Thank you. That was very interesting, very, very informative. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I accounted
Terry?
for a couple of those hits on the on the snowplow map, because it was, I don't know what I was expecting, if I was expecting to see the snowplows, driving down there, but it was pretty darn accurate as far as being able to gauge about when they would be in my area.
And discussion was had, and it was decided that we don't want people knowing where the plows are going to be, because I don't know if anyone noticed the articles in Spokane not too long ago about some confrontations with some snowplow drivers. A generalized area, I mean, if you looked at those zone maps, I'm going to slip, that areas of those zones are fairly small, so it's not, I mean, you can see that a plow's in a general residential area, and it will give them a good idea of when they're going to get plowed out. And again, this was shared to the public, and as GIS moves forward at the city, I can see more and more things being shared to the public in this matter, either for whether it be from capital improvement project information to other projects that are occurring in the city.
Thank you.
Al?
I'd just like to compliment Bob on your passion about GIS. It's not something that everybody grasps, but you are the guy.
I enjoy it. It's fun. Thank you.
And I hope the taxpayers, us being taxpayers ourselves, all appreciate the amount of man-hours that this kind of data saves. It's immeasurable. One of the big reasons we can do so much with so few people is because of people like you creating data like this that saves so many trips, saves so many mistakes, and even just on the plow example, it probably saved, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 emails because somebody could see when the plows are going to be on the way. So we appreciate the work you do, and I, as a taxpayer, I really appreciate it. So
yeah, thank you. It's like I said, it's fun, and the new employee helped out tremendously. It's been able to let me focus more on getting data out for viewing to the public instead of having to enter other information.
I do have one question, Mom. You showed us that one page that would be available to the public at some time. Do you have a date on when the, it looks like there's a lot of interesting information on that, too.
Yeah, technically, this is available now. It's live. If you were to go to this website, you would see this. Some of this stuff requires a login because I haven't got signed off from different departments to make some of these applications public yet, so they're only available internally. But you can see what I have right here. Like this urban renewal district is just something I made to show the existing urban renewal districts in the city of Post Falls. And it was to do a test. It shows not only the active ones, but the closed ones. But one cool thing is if you click on it, it has the information from the URD district right there. And if you actually hit this more info button, it will automatically take you to the actual URA district page for that particular district if you want to find out further information. And that's the joy of some of this GIS stuff. It makes it more easy to make these things. I have nothing to do with the urban renewal. I talked to them and they said, sure, link it on our site. It's good information. So now the people can go to the actual location from our website of the purveyor of the information, so to speak.
Excellent job.
Yeah.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you for your time again, and everyone have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next up is mayor comments and council comments. The mayor is not here, but I do have one comment regarding Mayor Larkin. Clay Larkin was the mayor of the city of Post Falls for 13 years and was a city councilor for 5 years before that. I think Mayor Jacobson has referred to him as the people's mayor, and he was a good friend to a lot of us, a very special mentor to me, and I would just like to pass along my condolences to his family, and he will be missed. So, anyone else? Al?
Yeah, when I came here as a businessman several years ago, one of the first meetings I had with the city was with Mr. Larkin, Mayor Larkin, and I was just shocked, I guess, at how open he was about sharing information and just how excited he was about Post Falls. And here I was new to the city, and I was thinking, wow, Post Falls is in good shape. This guy's, leading the charge, and he's such a great guy. And he's the guy that, as I got started in planning and zoning, and he was always a mentor to me whenever I had questions and stuff. And then when I decided I would try to take a shot at city council, he was the first guy I went and talked to, and he was a great guy to talk to at any time, just really open, and he will definitely be missed, and condolences to this family as well. So,
I'd also echo the condolences and thoughts to the Larkin family. As Alan already said, Clay was an open book. When I ran for council, a young whippersnapper at 34 years old, there's a lot of people that have been in a position like Clay who have had so much impact and influence on a community that annoying questions might actually be annoying, but they weren't annoying to him. He was always willing to sit and talk. Then I had I would actually call it the pleasure of of running for the same seat about 4 years ago. And I wish every campaign in the country could be run like Clay ran his. It was all about the issues. It was the most, one of the most cordial experiences I've had, even though we were in competition with each other. That's just how he was, and it was a really good and educational experience. He's just a good guy. With that also, I'd like to echo one of the public comments, all the work that has gone into the revamp of the plowing plans and everything else is paying off in spades. Everybody I talk to says, man, this is way better than last year, and it really is. The weather's been somewhat fortunate to give you a couple of breaks, but I think even if we had another February like we did last year, the difference is going to be apparent. So I know hundreds of hours, if not thousands, went into figuring out how to do it better, and it's better. So on behalf of me and my neighbors and the rest of Post Falls, thank you for all that effort. It's panning out.
Very good. Steve?
Just on Mayor Larkin, he was a great supporter of anything to do with kids and Parks Recreation. Probably one of the biggest movers on the Centennial Trail. He attended a lot of Centennial Trail meetings. I first got to know him through Quad Park. Whenever we'd have a big event, I was the state softball commissioner at the time, and whenever we'd have a big event, a regional tournament, national tournament, state tournament, Clay would always do the welcoming of the kids and their families to Post Falls, and just a great man. I think we all had the same experience when I decided to run for council. The first person I called was Clay, and of course he met me for coffee over on Spokane Street and kind of gave me the what to do's and everything. He always wanted to do is keep it positive. He said, whatever you do, just keep it positive, and just a great man, a lot of respect for him, a lot of respect. And once you got to know Clay, he always kept in contact with you. Once he got to know you, you'd always get an email from him, or once he got on Messenger, you'd get a lot of messages from him on that. So just a great man, nice guy.
Vin?
I've known Clay since pretty much I came to Post Falls. He was the assistant fire chief here when I came to Post Falls, and he actually was one of the people that sat down with me and said, you know, you should be interested in the fire department because of your experience, because I had come from another volunteer department when I moved here. And so it started out with his encouragement to get in, and then at the time I didn't live in the city, and I got kicked out of the fire department a week later. But you know, things change. I moved into the city, and here they are banging on my door again. You know, so came back in. But been a great friend over the years. He taught me how to fish at Priest Lake for the Mackinac, and had a great time there, and been a great supporter of me and the fire service all these years. He's always somebody you can rely on, you can sit down and talk to. So just a great man, love the man.
Yep. Okay.
I do have one thing
Okay,
I would like
Carrie.
to say. When I heard yesterday morning that Clay had passed away, and I knew that he had been in hospice, not for very long, just a matter of days, my first thought, and anyone that knew him, my first thought was, what a wonderful reunion that he was having with his much-loved grandson, Evan. That losing Evan was probably one of the most difficult things that I'm sure that he ever went through. And so it did make me smile yesterday, because I thought, him and Evan, they're hanging out. So I'll keep that thought.
Thank you, Carrie. That's very nice. And we don't need an executive session?
We do not.
And the next motion would be to?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.